In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to convert an existing MODX package into the Repoman format as a MODX Repoman package. So the first thing we need to do is get familiar with the Git chops here. So I'm going to fork this repository, and in this example, I'm going to use Jason's getResources snippet because it's a very simple extra. It's just, in all intents and purposes, it's just one snippet that's driving this, so it's good for an example. I'm going to fork that to my local repository, and now I have, you see we jumped over to Craftsman Coding, so I'm going to clone that to my local install. And just to be clear, I usually tend to put my repos directory right off my public HTML directory. So I'm going to clone it here, git clone. Oops, I didn't copy that correctly. Let me grab that again. And there it is, and it's pulling that down. And now we need to review some of the Git mechanics. So I'm going to go into the directory I just made and refer back to my notes here. So I need to clone my copy from my repository, and then I need to reference the original repository so my fork stays up to date with it. So this is, in this case, fetching the upstream from Jason's version of this. So we're updating it. Now it's tied to Jason's original version of this. And then I'm going to make a branch for my fixes. So just to review the notes here, git checkout will switch the branch, -b says create the branch in one command. And you can call this whatever feature name you want. I'm going to call this Repoman because this branch is for Repoman. So there we go. So I've created that branch. I think we can do git branch A. So we list all the branches here. We see we have a master and a Repoman, and Repoman is starred. That means that we're on that branch. And now we make our changes. So that was the Git part of this. Let's get over to the Repoman part of this. I'm going to open the directory in my text editor. So getResources, open it. And Repoman requires a composer.json file. So composer.json. And I've already prepared this, so I'm going to just copy what I made. So there we are. Utility snippet for fetching resources. Okay, there's that. I incremented the version from what's currently listed as the most recent. And now we just need to restructure this. So Repoman strives to have a simpler directory structure for development. So we're going to lose this whole core bit, and we're going to lose this build directory. So first thing, easy. Okay, docs, that can just go directly into the root of the repository. And we're going to make one change to the change log. That's all I need to do there. Now we need to create a couple directories here. Elements. And inside of elements, we want snippets. And that is where this belongs. And actually, I do not like the redundancy here of having snippets in the file name. So I'm just going to pull this out and call it getResources, because it should be obvious when you're in the snippets directory that that's a snippet. Should be obvious. I guess not always, but I'm going to put this in there for now too, even though that's not necessarily a snippet, but I'll look at that later. But by moving those files around, I can delete this obnoxious core directory. And we have a much simpler structure now. And now we need to look at this build. So this is historically what you'd use to build out your package. It was like all the code you needed to write after you'd written your code. So not a fan of this. Repoman replaces the need for the build. So all we need to do is update the comments here. So to review, Repoman uses a doc block syntax, and that's based off of a PHP doc syntax. Pretty common that you use these attributes to define things in your code. But it's a long way of saying that this comment isn't just a comment. It actually triggers functionality. So Repoman is going to look at this comment and figure out what you're talking about, what this actually is, and what its description should be. So the most common things here are name, and if this is your description, we'll call that description. It's important that each of these is on one line. Do not hit the return key. And sometimes you get some long lines, but that's just how it is. Okay, and the other thing that the most recent version of Repoman does is it supports snippet properties, and it does that using the parameter attribute name. And the syntax, I tried to follow the PHP doc syntax as closely as possible, is you have to define the variable type. So a lot of these are going to be string, and then the next bit here is the variable name. You can optionally put a $ there because it helps indicate that that is the name. And then what follows is the description, and you can optionally have a hyphen there. So basically that's a lot of just busy work going through and updating the comments here. And if you'll notice, what I'm trying to eliminate is, here's the properties that are added when the package was built. But you'll notice that this is a lot of the same stuff. It's like verbatim. So one of the principles in good coding is don't repeat yourself. So I'm going to try to cut down on that by copying over these descriptions over into our documentation block, so we have one place to manage them. Don't repeat yourself, right? So I've already done that again, so this is like a cooking show. I'm gonna just copy this over and paste it in. And there we are. So a couple things to point out. Most of these are strings. There is one parameter here that was kind of an odd duck, tpl.n. That's a variable, so you can't really list it as a snippet parameter in the MODX interface because it's a variable name. So I just left out the param. So kind of a weird one there, but we've got all that there. The list is one interesting operator. So this is one line, so it's kind of long, but we get over to default, and this defines what the default value is on any parameter, and it's in square brackets. And then we also have a little chunk here for options, and that also is in square brackets. So you notice that this starts with square bracket, and way over here it ends in the square bracket, and here we have a JSON hash that follows, where the first key there, that's what gets stored, and then the value is what gets displayed to the user. And so going through this, I have one typo there, between is between, and there we go. Yep, and you can also have a simple array, so that this is a key value hash in JSON, but we do have some options that don't have that, and let me just show you an example of that. So for example, the sorting parameters here, options equals in square bracket, ASC and DSC for ascending and descending, and you do end up with this awkward double bracket at the end, but that's the syntax that Repoman is looking for, and that's what it will import. So we've saved that. There was one change to the code. So to make this compatible with Repoman, 99% of it was up here in this case, right? It's all just tidying your comments. But when we're done with that, we have the lovely satisfaction of being able to delete this ungodly build directory. Bye-bye. There, it's gone. Much simpler repository. The one change in the code was kind of my own making. And Jason already structured this to use this. So I'm inferring that he was developing in a way that was looking for this particular system setting so that he could edit his own version of the snippet. And Repoman, this is the syntax it uses. So great. So we got the core path. It's going to look for Repoman's version of it. And if it's not there, it'll defer to the package manager installed version of it, and then include the file. So the one thing I had to add is because I changed the directory structure, is I had to point to where this include parse TPL was. And I put it alongside the snippet. Arguably, that's not the best place for it. But anyway, there it is. The last thing I need to do is I'm going to update this because it's not a snippet. It kind of belongs to that, but I don't want to import this as a snippet. And by default, Repoman's going to assume that everything in your snippets directory is a snippet. So there's one parameter I can add to the documentation block, no import. And that's going to tell Repoman, hey, give this guy a pass, don't import it. So that's it. And now Repoman's going to leave that alone. You can customize that if you want in the composer.json, but let's not get carried away. So that's it. We've made all our changes. Now this is a Repoman compatible package. So let's go back to get resources. I'm going to do composer install, And I don't think we need to have the vendor directory, but it's a good habit to get into because Repoman and new PHP development relies on Composer, so it's a good habit. Now if we check that, we do have a vendor directory. I'm going to make sure that getignore ignores the vendor directory. And there we go. So I think we've got everything there. Now let's try installing it. So I need to switch windows here because this is inside my virtual machine. So cd getResources. I need to navigate to my Repoman directory and run the Repoman command line tool. I need to tell it install here, this directory. So boom, it installed it. And now if I head back to the manager, I'm going to refresh this. And we're going to look into elements and snippets. There we go. Get resources. Boom. I'm going to look at it. It pulled in everything I had, the name, the description. It's referencing my version of the file. And then on properties, look, everything that I added to my documentation block is there. And just to show you that the options imported correctly, I'm going to look for a list. So here's a list, and there's all that JSON array stuff shows up as a drop-down. Yeah, so now we're able to work with that and not have to have the headache of the build directory. So hopefully that explains how this works and gives you a good example of what Repoman can do for you. I will say that if you do need to update, like say you screwed up one of these parameters, you would need to come back to Repoman and do an update. Because you're not just updating your snippet code, because that would just happen automatically. You could just work in your editor from now on and control your snippet. But because this is controlling related properties, you would need to run the update to pull those in. Now that we've done our fixes, let's refer back to our notes. We made our changes. Now we need to commit our changes and push them to our new branch. Git push origin, and my branch name is Repoman. So I'm going to do git add all, since I had some pretty severe changes to the paths there. Commit message origin Repoman. Push that up. And now I'm going to head back to GitHub here, and I'm going to do a pull request. New pull request. Add fork. I'm not very good at this, so let's see. Repoman, and going down to master. Yeah, because the original repository doesn't have other branches. It's just I'm pulling from Repoman over to the base. And I think that's all I need to do. There we go. So we've really simplified this one snippet and hopefully made it easier for Jason to maintain it. So that's basically the format you would follow to convert an existing MODX package for compatibility with Repoman.